Now that I'm telling you we've got a week, I got to tell you a little about Howard. All right. So Howard and Lenore were residents of Arlington for 53 years, I think you said. Mm-hmm. And both of them have always been very active in the community, and particularly active in the historical aspects of the community. Howard is an absolute lover of history. He loves to do research. He loves to do talks. He does wonderful talks. He did a talk for us a year or so ago on the Statue of Liberty. He was president of the society for many years, and we're eternally grateful for somebody like him who's willing to do the research and put together a wonderful program. Here you are, Howard.
You know, I was just wondering if I could, rather than sit there, I'd rather stand here. And I can still see the screen. Well, I haven't touched anything. Can you? It's on? Good. Well, good evening, and thank you all for coming. Before I start, I gave a similar talk in the year 2000, and I wonder how many of you were here for that talk. Please raise your hands. All right, well, you can check. This I sort of checked and made sure everything was in place, and I even found some new places. Okay. Well, what is the perimeter? I'm talking about the perimeter of Arlington, and it's about 10 miles. I can't say I walked every inch, and in terms of the water perimeter would be the Mystic Lakes. They didn't swim the Mystic Lakes either. They sort of poked around. I'm a lover of these U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey maps. It's a 7.5 degrees of arc map, and they cover. This is just a fraction of one. They cover about 80 square miles, and this is the topographic map part of the map that includes Arlington. One day I sat down with my map and I wondered about the Belmont-Arlington line. I found it on the map and I traced it, and it ended in a point. It ended at the Winchester line. And I said, that must be unique. Arlington, Belmont comes together at Winchester. It's 3 points, three towns coming together. So I went to our friend, our mutual friend, the internet, and I found this map here. There are about 60 tri-points in the U.S., the contiguous states. And I just wanted to show you one of this lonely Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York tri-point. So they're out there, and a lot of people, I'm sure, have visited all 60. Now this is Arlington, traced out on the map. And we're going to now start. Arlington is surrounded by 6 cities and towns, which means there are 6 tri-points. And I'm going to go through each tri-point and talk about what's on the edge or near the edge. And here are the tri-points shown on the map of geodetic survey map of Arlington. And we're going to start in Belmont, right here. Well, what's in Belmont nearby? And here's another, maybe a better map showing you what the tri-point might look like. And moving along, here we are at the tri-point of Arlington, Belmont, and Lexington. This is the Arlington side. This is the Lexington side. And that's the Belmont side. Not surprising. Well, when they built, the Epoch Corporation built a unit adjacent to the Belmont Country Club, and I was worried that what happened to the sign, because it would be very near very near the marker, the geodetic survey marker. So I went with my son to see if it was still there because they sold off. So there it is, it's still there. It's no longer on the golf course. And that's me. We went out one day. Well, what's on the edge here? We're all familiar with Spy Pond, our 103-acre pond, which was unfortunately reduced by 11 acres when they built Route 2, but there it is. But who knew about Little Pond? It's hidden. We have a barrier called Route 2, and then Little Pond has been surrounded by suburbanization. So I went looking for Little Pond, and I found a access right-of-way off Brighton Street. There's a little dock there that's really tumbling down. I was careful, went out, took a picture. Very pretty sight. It's unswimmable. It's Class D water, but it is pretty. Moving along, I found the home of Captain Stephen Frost on Pleasant Street. Just go down Route 60 and you come to Pleasant Street. And there's the house there. And in front of the house, there's a marker talking about Ensign Frost, who was on his way to the company of Minutemen. And when he reached the center of Menotomy, he found the old men of Menotomy waiting for the wagon train that was going to be resupplying Lord Percy's troops, the 1,000 additional soldiers that were sent out by General Gage. And they engaged the wagon train and captured it. And this is the story. And it's right there on Pleasant Street, nearby. Now, we're moving along. We're now at the Lexington and Arlington, Winchester Tri-Point, and we're going to talk about Lexington. And here it is. You can see the Tri-Point, how the boundaries are fitting in. And we come to the package store. Now, in 2000, this was very important because Arlington was a dry town. And you didn't want to drive too far to get your stuff. So Berman conveniently put it near Arlington on Mass Avenue. Well, I want to talk about the three-town monument. And you can see here, we have Philemon Street. And here you can see Wright Street. And we're going to talk about the Philemon Wright farm. Philemon Wright owned a farm that extended from this point near Summer Street all the way over to St. Eulalia's. Well, let's take a look at this three-town monument. Here it is. It must have been carved sometime between 1807 and 1867 because we have the WC. Later on, it was recarved for Arlington. And here we have the L for Lexington, it's not surprising. And we have the W for Winchester. And finally, we have the A for Arlington in the easterly direction. Now let's go to the Arlington Great Meadows. As we all know, Arlington owns a parcel of 133 acres within the town of Lexington. And the reason we purchased it was for our water supply. At the time, back in the late 19th century, we wanted to have our own water supply or an additional water supply, so the Meadows was purchased. And here we have the Meadows shown here. And we can see Monroe Brook running through part of the Great Meadows into the reservoir. It is the source of the Arlington Reservoir. I'll talk about Infinity Pond later. Well, here's the Arlington Reservoir. It's almost divided equally between Arlington and Lexington, but Arlington owns the reservoir and all the land around it. And let's see now. Bob McCursey and I recently took a walk around the pond. I really recommend it. It's a mile around, no roots, no stones to trip on. It's a very pleasant walk. And if you go, I suggest you go clockwise. We can talk about that sometime, why I say clockwise. This is a picture of Monroe Brook that feeds the reservoir. And this is a reservoir. We are very fortunate to have it. It's lovely. And here we have Reservoir Beach. There was a woman, the late Bernice Jones, who was on the Park Commission. And at the time, there was some question about the quality of the water, and she had a lagoon. We built a lagoon and filtered the water. The water was filtrated, and it's safe now, and it's a very popular spot. Less than a year ago, I took a walk with George Parsons out to the vernal pool. It's called Infinity Pond. It's a wonderful word, the Infinity Pond. And you can see it looks slightly wet. And of those of you who might not be familiar with vernal pools, what makes them special is that in the late summer they dry out. So no fish can live in them, so they are a habitat for amphibians, salamanders, crustaceans. And here's another view of vernal pond when it's pretty dry. So you have to go at least twice. Well, when I go into these woods here near the three-town marker, the conservation land, actually it's now called Whipple Hill Conservation Land, but it's almost like being in New Hampshire. And I find a glacial erratic. Here we have a glacial boulder. It was picked up by the glacier, moved, the glacier melted and dropped it here. And all this land was farmed, and the farmer, this was probably a pasture, because the farmer probably had no intention of moving a rock of that size. And I always wondered, what did they do with small rocks? Well, I've never seen this pile before, but some of these rocks made their way to my house in a part of the wall. But you wouldn't know which ones I took, would you? This is the llama pen. This is no longer there, but I kind of enjoyed it when it was there, because it was located off Summer Street, and this is here. This is a way to get into the Whipple Hill area. There are many ways in, and this is one of the ways. And here we have Patrick Lama, and there were two other adults. There was Fernando Lama, and there was Dalai Lama. And there were also a few juveniles. Then the parking for Whipple Hill, we're going to be going up Whipple Hill. You can reach it either coming down Winchester Drive and from Lexington, or from Winchester Johnson Road. Find a small parking lot. It's a short, steep walk up to the top, and there's the top of Whipple Hill. The problem is there are a lot of trees, and there are some views. In some directions, there is an absence of trees, so it's worthwhile going there. And there's the geodetic survey marker that's on top of Whipple Hill. Our wonderful member of our society, Bill Mahoney, a very generous member, told me about this boundary marker on Lowell Street, and you can see the ON for Lexington, and you can see the R for Arlington. Well, I decided to dig it out. And then I went before the Board of Selectmen, and I asked them, would they please raise it up? And they said they voted to do it. Then I went to Public Works. It never got done. And if you go by, that's what it looks like today. But it's safe. We're now at Winchester, Arlington, over here. And this is a similar map. You can see the tri-point is in 90 feet of water. And if we now are on Forest Street, you will come by this marker, this two-town marker. Remember I told you there are two streets in Arlington named Philemon and Wright. Well, this is the Philemon Wright farmhouse. Philemon is, as I found out, is a book in the Bible. And notice this here. Let's take a closer look. It's a bilingual sign. On the left is English, on the right is French. It was provided by the French government. Must be bilingual. And it honors Philemon Wright, who in 1800, with men and women and animals, went up to Ottawa and founded a town. A very entrepreneurial man. And this is to remember Philemon Wright. The house itself is near St. Eulalia's Church. So if you go up on Ridge Street, you would find it. Now, there's something called Window on the Mystic Lake. It's a 4-acre plot of land. It's hard to get to because there's no parking right on Mystic Street, so you have to park on the other side, and there's no light on Mystic Street either, so you have to get up to the other side. But it's an interesting place to walk down to. And what's in the window? That's in the window. There's a bench you can sit on. You can't hear the traffic on Mystic Street. It's very pleasant. Be with your own thoughts. And here we're near the Winchester Country Club. The Country Club is behind me. And what I'm pointing to is the Arlington-Winchester marker there. I show Dr. Herbert Meyer Brooke. Herbert Meyer was an Arlington conservationist, really pushed for things that were good. And he changed the name of Squash Station Brook to Dr. Herbert Meyer Brooke. And on a winter's day, I decided to follow it up. I trespassed on many properties, but nobody was out to stop me. And when I got up the hill, I found the source. It comes out of the ground. It's just an underground stream that emerges on the top, near the top of Myopia Hill. What's interesting I find here, you notice we have the Winchester-Arlington line. This is the Winchester Country Club. And notice the front door is in Winchester, so they have a Winchester address. This is the brook, picture of it, on one side of the road, and here is the brook when it enters the lake. Now, I said to myself, at the upper Mystic Lake, where the spot is, there must be a marker. So I decided I was going to go down and look at it, so I spoke to the property owner. I don't know which property it was, but it was on the line. It was either here or there. And he agreed to let me walk down, but I was amazed how steep it was. He had a staircase, but you can see what happens right here. These are contour lines and how close they are together, which indicates steepness. But I managed to get up, down and up, obviously. And when I got down, this is what I found. I wasn't surprised. The Arlington on this side, it said the A for Arlington. Then we find the W for Winchester. Now we go to the middle of the lake, about 90 feet of water. Is there a marker down there or not? Ooh. But that's not me. I can assure you that's not me. So something might be there, but I just don't know. I just want to take aside for a moment. I'm a longtime member of the Middlesex Canal Association. And this piece of land at one time was part of Arlington. And I'm going to go through that very quickly. And if that land was in Arlington, the Middlesex Canal came through this section, so we can say that Arlington was once upon a time a canal town. This is when West Cambridge was set off in 1807 from Cambridge. And then in 1842, when the town of Somerville was created, they took all the land came from Charlestown, and then the land north of it was given to Arlington. So we had this section up here was given to us, and what's Sometimes it's given, it's taken away, because when the town of Winchester was organized, they took a large section away, so we lost this section here. So from 1842 to 1850, we had about a mile of canal within our town. And if you go into Winchester, as I have done, and look for the canal, you can still see traces. I just wanted to show this to you, how sad what happened to our town. When Belmont was formed, we lost all this land down here. This went to Belmont. Can't cry anymore. Well, we're in the middle of, back to the middle of the lake, but let's go to the other side, because Winchester is on both sides of the lake here. And you would expect on the other side there would be a similar geodetic survey marker. And on my way to finding the marker, I found Shannon Beach. Shannon Beach, you might know it as Sandy Beach. It's a MDC, a Metropolitan District Commission beach. Nice place. Busy on a summer's day. This is the Middlesex Canal that I mentioned I was a member of for a long time. And the canal went from here, this is the Merrimack River, down to Boston Harbor, and here we are in Winchester. And there's a marker on Mystic Valley Parkway on the Winchester side that tells a little bit of the history of the canal. Basically, the canal was completed in 1803, and by 1851 it was out of business. The Boston Lowell Railroad put it out, bankrupted the canal, and if you were an investor, you lost your money. And the prism of the canal still exists. You can walk in and you can walk up to the lake. By this path ends at the lake, the Upper Mystic Lake. Well, I said there must also be a marker on this side parallel to the one we have on the Arlington side. There must be a Medford Winchester marker. So there it is, it's hidden. I saw poison ivy. My arms were uncovered. I had a short sleeve shirt on, but I said, I know it's there. And I'm going to be careful. Well, there it is, unexposed. I dug it, I clipped it out. It says Medford here. It says the W for Winchester on that side. Thank goodness for prednisone. You should never have to suffer with exposure. Never. Now, what's between the lakes? There's a dam between the lakes. I really don't know what these people are doing. I mean, I know they're fishing for the herring, but I don't know what the Mystic River group are having these people do. But this is the old dam. That's the point I want to make here. And because the dam was causing flooding to the people who live near the dam in Arlington, they basically created a new dam and updated this one. And let's look at that. Well, this is the dam in Fish Ladder. The Medford Boat Club is over here on this side. So if you want to walk into the dam, you have to approach it from the Medford side. And it's very interesting if you go there during the time the herring are running, you can see the birds overhead looking for meals and finding meals. So go there in May and when the herrings are running. And this is the new structure that was built. Over here you can see the old dam. The new dam in Fish Ladder is located here. With the building of this fish ladder, the fish can now move up the Mystic Lakes to Winchester Center, where they built another fish ladder, which then gives them access to Horn Pond. So they can get as far as Horn Pond now. Now we're at the Medford, Arlington, Somerville, and we're over here. Moving along, this is the Tri-Point. The Tri-Point is at the confluence of the Mystic River and Alewife Brook. Well, you know, Medford was wet, Arlington was dry, and they're just being kind to us. Very thoughtful. Many of us are familiar with the poem by Lydia Maria Child. She grew up and lived in Medford, and we know it as grandmother's house, but actually the poem, the first stanza, is over the river, through the wood, to grandfather's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh through the white and drifted snow. This is where she lived. She was the author, a poet. She was also an author and an ardent abolitionist, to her credit. Well, you can see how excited a child would be. You know, we're going to grandfather's house, we're going by sled. And here she goes, from her house here on Ashland Street, across the Mystic River to the other side. At that time, I'm sure it was farmland or woods to grandfather's house. It's about a half a mile. And there's grandfather's house. From what I understand, it was not as grand when she was a child. I mean, the house has been improved, greatly improved. But this was grandfather's house. By the way, grandmother is mentioned, but in the last stanza. Also in Medford now, I found the Sagamore John Monument. And the words on the monument of Sagamore John and those mystic Indians whose bones lie here. And it's interesting, what's on top is a piece of Roxbury pudding stone. And what is pudding stone? It's a conglomerate of sand and big pebbles. And it was a sedimentary rock created by the glacier. Then nearby we have the slave wall. The slave wall is on the former Thomas Brooks estate on Grove Street in Medford, and was built by Pomp. He was an enslaved person to the family, to the Brooks family. And here we have his wall, built by Pomp in 1765. And you can visit it nearby. You don't have to take a boat or a plane. Also, Amelia Earhart, for a number of years, lived in West Medford with her mother and sister. And she had a sad ending. It was an incredible flight she had to take to go around the world. And they just couldn't find Howland Island, and they ran out of gas, and they ditched in the ocean. But in front of the house, there's a marker honoring this very brave person. Well, we're now down to Somerville and Arlington and Cambridge. We're over here, and let's see what we have. Well, this is a map that I show each time. This is Alewife Brook, and I believe the boundary line was probably, haven't confirmed it, was probably a property line. And when they created Somerville, some surveyor just continued the property line to separate the two towns. Not surprising. And this is, oh, by the way, this store is still here, and all the liquor, these package stores are still in business. Now we come to St. Paul's Cemetery, which is along Alewife Brook. And here we have the grave of Garrett John Cody, who was an Arlington police officer, the only one, thank God, who was killed in the line of duty. He left a wife and 5 children. And let's honor Officer Cody for his service. He gave the ultimate. Well, let's take a look at Alewife Brook after the glacier. Here we have Mystic River, and notice it sort of stops here, but would continue. But this is the brook. And it's meandering. You know, after the glacier left, many streams of water become meandering, and this one is quite meandering. And I guess people that like clean town boundaries don't like a meandering boundary. So they uglified Alewife Brook. Today it's pretty straight. And they put it in a culvert, and they straightened it and put it in a culvert. And you can see the culvert back here. And the water that's in the Alewife Brook, remember, comes from Spy Pond, the Little River to Alewife. I would drive by this very large hedge on Alewife Brook Parkway, and I always wondered what was behind it. And one day, I parked my car, got out, went behind the bush, and I found a nice house. So I was satisfied. This is Dilboy Field. Actually, today it's the Dilboy Memorial Stadium. It was built in 1920 to honor George Dilboy, a Greek immigrant. And it was rebuilt in the 1990s. And the Shannon family, remember we now have Shannon Beach, wanted it renamed to honor Charles Shannon, State Senator Shannon. And when the veterans heard that, they said, no way, it's staying Dilboy. And here's a little bit about, he certainly deserves to be honored. A brave man. Almost a boy. Well, I wanted to get in and take a photo of the plaque that's behind the gate, but you can only get in when there's an event. So I took a picture on this side, then I jumped over to this side, so I got the plaque. We're now down to Cambridge, Arlington, Belmont. We're over here. And here's this map here that shows the tri-point. This comes from an Arlington site. Arlington has some wonderful GIS graphics. Now this shows the Concord Turnpike in Arlington, but there's also a similar piece over here in Belmont and Cambridge. And you notice the tri-point is in the three towns. So I wondered if there was an accident, what town is it assigned to? So I made contact with Chief Ryan, our former chief of police, and he said, just get out a GPS and determine where it is. And then he asked Chief Flaherty, who is the present chief of police, and she confirmed it. So that's what they would do. They would, because they have to assign an accident to a town, because that affects your rates then, your insurance rates. Well, Norton's is still there on Mass Avenue. Now, I wanted to find the marker, the marker that I believed was on Route 2. So I would pace from Lake Street to where I felt it would be. And after the summer solstice, late June, the sun comes up at 5 in the morning. So you have a lot of illumination. So I said to myself, if I run out to the center line at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning, there's not going to be much traffic. Well, that's what I did. It's not there. Something might be there, but I didn't find it. But I did find this. Not actually this set of yellow pages, but I saw yellow pages, and I must admit I didn't pick them up. Maybe I should have, and you'll see why. That's when a state mower goes through yellow pages. Why the operator didn't get out and off and pick it up, I don't know. Then I was walking around in Somerville near the line, and I came upon this house here that talks about this Civil War site. Camp Cameron. Cameron was Lincoln's Secretary of War. And then I noticed, and I followed it, and here, this is Mass Avenue, and you can see Cameron Avenue, which is honoring Camp Cameron. And then the Cambridge Historical Society placed this plaque at that intersection. Spend just a moment or so on Acorn Park Drive. What we're looking at, this area here is behind the old Bowlerdrome. I hope you all probably remember that. And this was the site of Arthur D. Little. He had a number of buildings in there. Through bad management, they went bankrupt, and they're now a Belgian company, and they have a Boston office. But what has happened to the area here, this is Acorn Park Drive down here. The reason it's Acorn Park, this was the motto of Arthur D. Little. Scatter acorns that oaks may grow. And in there's a plaque to Arthur D. Little, and they now renamed Acorn Park Cambridge Discovery Park, and it's a nice place to visit. There's when Bob McCurshey and I walked out to Little Pond in Belmont, we picked up the trail here and walked about a mile or so. We're getting close now to the Alewife Brook Station, and I found this witness marker. What a witness marker is, when a surveyor can't place the marker where he wants to put it, he puts it where he can put it, and then provides the bearing from this marker to the point. Now, what point he wanted, I don't know. But I did find this marker here with the C for Cambridge. And through that area there, we have the Arlington-Cambridge line. For those who don't like to read upside down, we have the Cambridge-Arlington line. I found on one of the boulders that was a carved piece of granite, these words, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we can see these herrings here. And the words are on the marker. The alewives ran so thick that during the spring thaw, you could walk across the river on their backs. And if you go to the dam between the lakes, when they run, they really are thick. They have come back. I don't know whether they can walk across on their backs, but they're back. And here's another carved rock. Now, what's no longer on the edge? Well, here we have what is the Cambridge-Charlestown line. Little Cambridge is Brighton. Here we have Cambridge. We have Arlington, and the farms are Lexington. And this is the line, the Cambridge line, which is now Warren Street. And if you continue the line to the end, you come to a marker by Mount Pleasant Cemetery, the WC, because this used to be the Charlestown West Cambridge line. So we have a marker to remember that time. Almost the end. What did I miss? Maybe during the, after the program, you can tell me what you know about, and I'll include it next time. Well, Arlington on the Edge talks. The premiere was in 2000. Tonight, we have the encore. I'm planning on the Redux in 2048. I want you all to be here. Thank you. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
The stream that runs underneath the high school, where does that originate?
That comes out of the Arlington Great Meadows. That's Mill Brook.
And it heads into, because it goes across Mystic and then it goes into Medford, correct?
No, no, it then empties into the lower Mystic Lake.
Could you repeat the question?
The question is about the Mill Brook. Where does the Mill Brook originate? And it originates in the Great Meadows. And it flows through Arlington and empties ultimately into the lower Mystic Lake.
I have a question.
Yes.
When Arlington lost those pieces of land in Belmont and Winchester, was that decision made by the legislature?
Oh, it had to be. And obviously, some political pressure was put on them to, I think a lot of it had to do with these towns not wanting to pay the school tax or figuring out how to lower their taxes.